Welcome to Petzel Gallery. This is our very first virtual walkthrough the gallery. We experienced obviously a little bit of a 5-month shutdown, and this is actually really our first solo exhibition since March with the work of Pieter Schoolwerth. We thought like there is a, we cannot really expect too many people to come from abroad or from various different other cities to come to New York to see this exhibition. So that's why I thought like the Zoom conference call might be the introduction to Pieter's work. And then the other experience is that this is actually Pieter's premiere with my gallery in New York. So this is actually a new, we have a project together in 2017 in Berlin at Petzel, but this is really his first exhibition with me in Chelsea. The opening is scheduled for Thursday, so I would love if people come. We are certainly kind of helping people to kind of feel safe. I mean, at the moment we are not wearing masks, we are 6 feet apart. But when you come on Thursday, there are all the necessary precautions that we took. So let's move over to Pieter. Welcome.
Hello.
And we start with one of the very first paintings here in the exhibition. This is the first painting you see basically when you come from the street, from 18th Street. The title of the show is Shifted Sims, and then this is called Tiny Living.
The show is not about The Sims, of course. I don't even play video games. It was again about thinking about this idea that we're living a different kind of simulated life now, and that because of that, The Sims is a fully formed digital environment that is a simulation. It's a simulation game. So that seemed to be an obvious point to set my next show, in which I'm trying to figure out how to depict this new avatar body. All of the work in the show is sourced from screenshots of The Sims 4. So what you're seeing are characters that are in effect being controlled by players that are different identities than are depicted. You know, it's a fantasy character in which you can be and perform any aspect of life you like. So the paintings are an attempt to kind of see what happens when we try to represent that body that's once removed from your actual body as the player of the game, which is not unlike my body of the artist making the figure.
So let me ask you this, like in the center of this allegory appears to be a simulated art opening. Basically what we are trying to avoid. We are trying to do something a little more in person.
This is basically us here now, right? Yeah, this is simulation of an opening. This painting then appears to the right.
So here we have a larger version, so to speak, of that small eco lifestyle.
So the titles of the paintings in the show are derived from the way that the player of the game gets information, much like how we download things from the web, what's called expansion packs, stuff packs, and game packs that enable your avatar to have certain experiences, to go places and do things. So this particular scenario is from the Eco Lifestyle expansion pack, where you can engage with you know, issues about the environment, about what's happening with global warming. So that's sort of how the series are organized.
You mentioned to me this character is maybe familiar to a lot of people, and this one as well. Star Wars, I see, you know.
This character occurs multiple times throughout the show. I see it almost as this kind of Joker character, in this case maybe standing almost in for the environment itself, sort of sardonically laughing at the demise at the hands of the humans. In a way, almost the voice of the painting expressing itself, you know, watching this planet, you know, burn. And Princess Leia, in a way, is maybe having some doubts as to whether this is a place she wants to live or whether she wants to go back where she came from, for sake of a simplification.
Well, across from this picture, we have a painting that you titled Impossible Burger Connoisseur. When looking at individual paintings in this series, some of these pictures seem to be doubled, shifted, ghost-like. They overlap like opposing scripts or create a sense of dissonance. I've noticed each of the figures depicted in your painting seem to appear twice. Is this the result of Shifted Sims? Can you talk a little bit about the title of the show, meaning Shifted Sims?
Yeah, so As I mentioned before, the avatar body, which is the body I see of the body we perform today in our everyday life, is in a way a body that we inhabit. You know, anybody can inhabit this body through another body. So in other words, when you have an Instagram profile, you're behind the screens, you're behind the screen, and you are controlling your presence. So I wanted to build that into the formal workings of the show. So this is a YouTuber career. This is what this is called, and she's performing for the camera. She does food reviews, particularly about burgers. In this case, I'm pretty sure this is the first painting of an impossible burger in art history. And the impossible burgers seem to make sense because it's a hamburger without a hamburger. You know, it's the meat is taken out. So her body is split in a way, and we have, you know, the body parts distributed between the two, the ghost and the actual body.
And then we're gonna slowly walk into the second gallery space, and we're looking at a painting called Get Together. So first we're gonna do a nice little sweep of the first gallery, and then we're gonna look at here on the right side. It's actually the west side of the second gallery. This is called Get Together. And I would just mention that we have another kind of these, these characters that take a selfie of each of themselves.
Yeah, you do usually take a selfie of yourself, right?
Oh, sorry. Double bind.
One of the really, actually something I thought about a lot with these, there's multiple selfie paintings. I thought initially when I started playing these simulation games, it was a bit ironic that you would take a selfie in a simulation game. But then I realized it's actually a simulation, so people do all the same things. But one of the real challenges for painting is thinking about the history of expressionism and depicting people. What happens when you're trying to depict a person that's actually being navigated by someone else? You know, so the figure that's sitting for you traditionally is very confusing to think that it's actually a different person behind the screen, behind the avatar. And that was something that was, I think, is a very timely problem, because so often during our day we encounter these conversations where we haven't met the person and we don't know who they are. We don't even know if they're running their own phone, if they're on their own computer. So I think this idea of depicting a character that's being controlled by another is something that I was thinking a lot about in the show. And a selfie, in a way, is almost this effort to like smash it all together as we're always trying to get in the frame.
Well, that paint there in the center of the picture is amazing. It has some quite grotesque elements, but I think some of these pictures, they have an uncanny kind of sense of humor as well, I hope.
I hope so, you know. I mean, I always have thought humor is hugely important in times like now more than ever, to, you know, try to get through as a group, you know, and going to a show and having this feeling of connection. And
right.
I think at the end of the show, I hopefully have a feeling that I do affirm the importance of human connection.
And now, I mean, in terms of humor, I think we have the future plant sim.
Plant sim.
On the right, you see a figure that is turning into a plant. I think I've never seen this in the history of. Well, actually, that's not true. There are precedents in painting.
So you can get a chip to put in your avatar to simply grow yourself in the garden, and you can grow leaves, and you can become a non-human figure, but you can still interact with your friends, which is, you know, a pretty nice idea that you can become part of nature. I think maybe painting is a good place to talk about the fact that there are many different languages of painting that I've tried to combine. You know, over my career, I like to change my work a lot, just to try to keep things interesting for myself. And I came back to rendering heads in a somewhat expressive mode. And I've combined the expressive heads, which are kind of trapped in this almost infrastructure, I call it, of a much more tightly controlled, taped off and orchestrated kind of space, which is, I think, the space of networks, you know, that connect us all. And we're kind of in a way in this world where we're trying to express ourselves through this incredibly oppressive architecture of the digital world. And I take these two kind of stylistic modes of painting as the human in this infrastructure. But the heads really are just, I sit down and paint them in one shot usually. They're completely improvisational, and With a few exceptions, they're all completely made up out of my head, no pun intended. And
I mean, what about when I look here on the right, which is called the Fashionista career? When I look at these figures, are they constructed? Are these kind of combinations from various different screenshots, or is this somehow?
Some of them are, yeah. I have a huge collection of screenshots from just playing the game, from watching people talk about the game in forums and chat rooms. Players generally capture a screenshot, which is why so many of the paintings in the show are horizontal, and they share them with the Sims community to try to help each other navigate this strange world that they're playing. This painting happens to be a composition that came entirely from one screenshot. And you'll notice that on many of the paintings there, off to the right there is an area of white border that arises, this kind of cropping. And this is what I call the shift, in that the screenshot has been shifted to the left, which exposes this three-dimensional infrastructure beneath it, which I'm calling the model, which I'll get to in a minute. So the screenshot has just been moved over, and that causes this actual shift of this head to appear inside this head. So we have here a compression or a collapse, superimposition of two figures into one in almost like a cubistic way.
So then we go to the south wall in the second gallery to look at the luxury party stuff. And here I see some heads that certainly remind us maybe of other human depictions or faces. Tell us a little bit about influences of other artists. I mean, have you looked at I'm sure you did look at Francis Bacon, you know, we show the audience one of his self-portraits from 1969, I believe. When I look at the luxury party stuff, I feel like there are some echoes.
Yeah, there was a time when I was very involved with the kind of expressionistic tradition of rendering. And like I said, I've cycled through so many different things. I think this show really is an attempt to kind of bring them all together after 20 years and put them into one kind of blender in which I pit them against each other, and that these expressive, almost Baconian moments are struggling against this thing, this space around them. Luxury party stuff is another expansion pack, a memory pack that the avatar can download, in this case, to traverse one's class. You know, this is perhaps some sort of gala event at a museum or something. So there is, again, a fluidity to the identity production that goes on in the avatar that allows them to very humorously, and I hope so in many cases, to go traverse class up, down, sideways, you know, become an animal, become an alien. In this case, there's a kind of a humorous, because of the shift, this male figure who's perhaps some kind of a lecherous, unwanted guest at the table, shifts off of his silhouette, and inside of his face, I sort of create the gestures of a sort of generic male. And that creates this narrative of her ringing the bell and calling for help.
I mean, because we have one element that here, as a demonstration, so to speak, I wanted to show the audience one of these models that you build before you construct the painting, so to speak. This is here called the cow plant model. I would like to emphasize this is not part of the exhibition. We just brought it in here for people to recognize how intricate these paintings are being built, so to speak.
So that you might notice, and again, I've always tried to, as every artist does, I imagine, just to have people stand in front of the paintings, because there's a very particular kind of three-dimensional space that occurs. And that occurs because all of the compositions are composed inside of a 3D model that is actually extrapolated from a screenshot of the game. So I have this just to show you an example. This is the screenshot of the game, which I then bring into 3 dimensions. And then this is slightly shifted off the model, which when we look at the painting in a second, you'll see how that creates this 3-dimensionality of happens through photography, because I take a photograph of the model. I put that in the computer, I put the screenshot fragments back into the model, I print it out, and I paint on it. I began doing this about 5 years ago when I started thinking a lot about how the substance of so many experiences in life has been abstracted from the experience. You know, we buy things without credit, we have human relations and sex without bodies, we have violence without blood through the games we play. But what would that be like for painting? And you know, so because we have such little direct contact with the world, I thought of this idea of indirect painting. So the model is this kind of space between the painting and myself that I compose within. Very much like a computer or an iPhone or something like that. It's a blank repository that you distribute information in and compose your life. So we can maybe see the painting here.
On the painting on the left now, you see the cow plant. The painting is called, is this cow plant model, no? No,
yes,
cow
yes.
plant.
Yeah, this is the cow plant.
This is the cow plant. You see
another
robot.
Ecological sort of motivated mod you can get where you can grow animals in your garden. And you can see here that the shift of the screenshot, which the border is here, the shift has been to the left and to the upper, the left and up. So we have a border that arises on the bottom and the top and the right.
And you see here again, I mean, iconographically speaking, again, like there's a reference to photography. This person is taking a picture, and then this ghost, like the shadow, is kind of blended into that, well, canvas behind, or?
Yeah, and you frequently see these projection screens, which I'm always thinking when I'm painting that what if there was a person behind the screen that's actually like, you know, backlit. I don't know if it's me, I don't know if it's a potential viewer, I don't know if it's some narrative about the cow plant that's happening in the game. But you have this ominous figure that's often lurking, which is a feeling that I get in many interactions and communications I have through the web or through my phone, where you don't really know what's at the end of the line, which I think is very much the state of the body now. It's just, where is it? Who's behind it?
When I see these kinds of like details here, like the martini glass or so, I'm thinking of other artists maybe that have to some extent influenced you. I mean, I think of Albert Oehlen's inkjet canvases over the years. He was one of the first artists, I think, that, you know, was not afraid of using the computer and made impossible paintings. Albert Oehlen, I think, has been a huge influence to some extent on your work, no?
Yeah, I think it's more the possibility of liberating painting through photography in my case, or through what you can do with Photoshop, because I think after painting for 20 or so years in a more or less traditional way, you realize that you can only do so many things with a brush, and then it's nice to try something else. And I realized with, you know, certain digital ways of manipulating photographic images, you can simply make pictures that the hand can't produce.
Right.
And that can really augment the language you have to print out on the canvas to combine with your marks you make by hand.
I mean, the other element also, I mean, I'm talking a little bit about historical precedents, but the eye, in most of the paintings that I've seen of yours over the years, like the eye never finds rest. I mean, there's so many figures doing so many different activities, so to speak. So I was reminded a little bit of Baroque painting, in particular some of the frescoes in Roman cathedrals, and there's the Da Cortona, famous. I mean, there's so
pretty Baroque, some pretty Baroque paintings in
some
here.
very busy paintings that remind me of the Baroque. And the Baroque had been an influence to you, what, since 20 years, to some extent, no?
Yeah, perhaps longer. As much as I admire the modernist canon, I think it's more and more been interesting for me to go to completely different sources of influence. One of the things I particularly like about simulation games, in this game in particular, is the degree to which it's inclusive and diverse, and it's very much living in the present moment. It's and in the sense that one's identity can become anything and you can perform anything you like, I think it's a nice update and alternative to the traditional canon of art history. So that was a big reason that I came to The Sims, was this sort of socio-progressive side of the politics behind it. Yeah, regarding the Baroque, I think, as you mentioned, this information onslaught, which I think is embraced by gaming, you know, and embraced by people that are comfortable with online presences and communication in general. The recessional space that I've been trying to find a way to depict in my paintings is very different from the recessional spaces of traditional Baroque paintings, which is created through the illusionism of painting. This is actually created through, again, this 3D model that creates a shallow space, you know? So unlike something like Tintoretto where you have like miles behind, here you have, you know, maybe 8 inches. And I think that's something more what we're getting used to looking at all day, you know? These kind of drop shadows that in my case, they're actually real shadows because it is a photograph. It's not created digitally, the photograph, which is a bit confusing. But recessional space is now shallow, which is a strange sort of update to the 16th century.
Since we're in the 16th century, not to stress the point too much, but when I look at the wicked woohoo sex mod on the right,
I love hearing you say that, by the way.
I have whatever fantasies myself, but also I think of some compositional devices that we talked about, Pontormo being one of them in Florence. How would you explain this picture?
Well, I think something about the idea of an avatar presence, which is again one body behind another, that in many ways it liberates, you know, the performer, whether that's a performer on a text message, someone that doesn't know who you are, or it's something as literal as a sexual fantasy that you'd like to experience. The avatar has a shifty presence, which is again part of the title, and this can enable, you know, pro-pleasure fantasies. I think this might be one of them, I'm not sure. Or it can conversely, unfortunately, enable trolling and you know, shaming and other things that have become part of internet culture. So in this image, I imagined, while thinking about mannerist painting from the 16th century, I imagined the fantasy of a female alien who's positioned in the lower right, this green figure that's enjoying herself. And what would a femalian fantasy perhaps be positioned as us, you know, so because we could easily become this. So we have this kind of sweeping composition that I was thinking about the deposition by Pontormo, particularly the colors, and how you have these kind of very elastic bodies that are just stretching and flowing.
I mean, talking about fantasies, I mean, here we have the male pregnancy mod on the right hand. So this is another device for men to experience, I mean, or any avatar to experience the possibility of giving birth or being pregnant.
Sharing the horror, the responsibility. So yeah, here it's, again, another kind of, the Baroque often has these crisscrossing diagonals, which is something that I seem to always come back to. I'm not sure why, but I guess it's just the dynamics of the X. And you have 2 male figures that are in some kind of birthing clinic. It's not clear. And then behind the scenes is this kind of alien dominatrix figure that's celebrating the birth of apparently their child. So yeah, it's again the avatar can gain capabilities with the body that are much more potential to do different things than ours do.
And then on the, what is that, the south wall, we have the COVID-19 expansion pack. So that is kind of a bit like, you know, not the end of the show, but it kind of is another showstopper, I think, of a, you know, particular picture. There's a figure that's lying on the ground there. I see a lot of emois. How do you explain the title COVID-19 expansion pack?
Well, in thinking through the Baroque, I was also thinking about a lot of old history painting, and then why is it that history painting disappeared? And that became interesting because I really was, as a challenge, I wanted to kind of find a way to memorialize the experience I'd been through with my friends and my partner and everyone in the last 6 months. And history painting seems to be something that would be interesting to embrace as a challenge. And thinking what would a contemporary form of history painting be, and what would be the aesthetic kind of formal presentation of it that would make the most sense. So I thought a lot about, you know, emojis and meme culture and simulation games as maybe a kind of a contemporary update on the kind of what we think of as a 19th century model of depiction. The challenge, however, with these more contemporary digital modes of expression is that they often have this kind of softness to them, or it's almost like an ironic distance that you have, particularly in meme culture, I think, that makes it very difficult for the avatar to express a genuine, the feelings of a genuine human tragedy in real life, in the actual world. So what I'm hoping to build into this work is this tension between the inability, the avatar trying to express, and then looking out my window on the street and feeling the weight of this actual, tragedy that the world has been through, and that maybe the avatar and hiding behind masks and screens is just simply not a way to contend with it, that it really is a tragedy that we may have to, work together and address deep structural problems in order to contend with, and that, emojis aren't quite enough.
Definitely not. That kind of wraps it up. I mean, that concludes our first virtual walkthrough via Zoom. I hope the audience experienced something that is unique. I really hope that people can come here on Thursday when we open to the public between 10 and 6, so we don't have a opening party, so to speak. We have limited capacity. We will also have social distancing here. We have all the hand sanitizers, and you have to log in at the front desk in order to be able to trace any possible infection. We hope we don't have that. But these are definitely paintings you want to experience in real life, and so I hope you guys can come on Thursday. Thank you very much.